I live inside of a food forest. A food forest is an ancient concept that's making a comeback. It's not your typical vegetable garden where you have nice neat rows inside of a little box. It's a perennial garden that comes back every single year, and it's layered to mimic the biology of a forest. Food forests can live to be thousands of years old. And they don't just produce food, they produce medicine, fuel, building materials, makeup, even paint. Food forests can be as small as 10 square feet, a half acre like mine, or as big as the Amazon, which, by the way, is a food forest. Now, I'm not a farmer, I'm actually a magician, and my job is to remind people that anything is possible, even when it comes to climate change. And that's what I love about food forests. They evoke that sense of wonder and connection and real resources that we need. They will capture carbon and lower our carbon footprint at the same time by the things that we produce. Now, I started forest gardening when I was going through kind of a rough time in my life. On the surface, everything seemed fine. I had just moved to a new city with my wife. We just had a baby. And my career was taking off. I was performing at big events all over the country and on TV. But I felt very disconnected from my life, from other people, and even myself. And on top of this, the fear of climate change was setting in, sticking in the back of my mind. I was starting to wonder, what's the world going to look like for my son when he's my age? I couldn't sit by and do nothing. So I decided I was going to plant a food forest. And I remember the moment I decided. I was driving through one of the massive cornfields of the Midwest. And I got out to get some air. And I was just looking out at this massive, massive cornfield and realizing there used to be a forest here. There used to be a prairie and wetlands and animals and people. Starting a food forest was my way of creating hope for myself and for other people during these times. Now, building a food forest is not just like starting a garden. It's more like starting a terrarium, except you are the animal and you get to decide what's on the menu. You're building it around yourself. We planted almost 100 different types of edible and useful plants, things like fruit and nut trees, shrubs, herbs, vines, even mushrooms. And that lawn that I hated to mow, it turns out that was edible too. I would just let it grow a little bit and there were edible plants that I could make a salad out of. It felt like an invisible world and conversation was opening up just for me. New instincts started to kick in. I could see the way that the environment was connected to each other and how I was connected to it. My body became in tune with the weather and the seasons. And other things started to happen. Rare birds would show up and insects, and they'd fly over to say hi, they'd lay some eggs and become part of the family. Our food forest gives us a safe place to grow, to be creative, and to stay safe, especially during lockdowns of 2020. The more I gave to nature, the more it gave back to me, and I started to feel like myself again. It brought my family closer together. I got healthier, and who knows, maybe one day, when my son's older, he can take some of the things that we're creating and start a little business out of it, maybe sell some things at the farmer's market. Either way, I feel more confident and safe with a food forest in our lives. It creates real results for climate change that we can see and experience. Speaking of which, here are some of my favorite features that are producing so far. Elderberries. This native berry is actually a medicinal berry that you can turn into a syrup that helps your immune system against coughs and viruses. Our chickens are part of the family, and not only do they give us eggs every day, but they help us create wheelbarrows full of compost every season. And I think my absolute favorite are the mushrooms. Not just the ones that I forage for in the neighborhood, but also the ones that I'm growing in wood chips and in logs. So, I hope you ask yourself if planting a food forest is right for you. Maybe there's something you could start in your backyard. Maybe you could take some of those empty pots and start a garden on your balcony or on the rooftop. Or maybe there's a place you could start a garden behind the field, in the field behind your office building. You could build one with your coworkers. I think we can be successful during this climate crisis because I and others are proof that one person is capable of restoring an ecosystem and creating a little microclimate. You just have to move with the natural patterns of the earth. We only have one shot to get climate change right and set the next generation up for success. And we're not going to do this with our hands in our pockets, feeling angry and upset. We have to get excited about this, and we have to realize that we can save the planet by throwing a party, eating good food, and making art. And we can do it together. So don't forget, if the place that you live doesn't look like a paradise, you can make it into a paradise. That's the magic of a food forest.